Welcome to another episode of POLITalks at TAMUSA, the podcast of the Political Science program at Texas A&M University in San Antonio. My name is Eugen Nagy. I'm a faculty here in the Department of Criminology and Political Science, and it is my joy to welcome my esteemed guest for today, Dr. Silviu Rogobete, who is a faculty himself in the field of political science, teaching at the West University of Timişoara in Romania, but also has a background in diplomacy, is an active international scholar in the field of international security, has taught as a guest lecturer at various universities in South Africa, in Europe, in Brussels, in the United States at Gonzaga University. So his resume, his background, his experience is wide and varied, and we will try to touch on several of these aspects. So welcome, Silviu. It's a joy to see you.
Thank you very much, Eugen. Great honor and pleasure to be with you.
So you have, as I said, a wide and a varied background, and I want, our podcast has a varied sort of public as well, because we both try to appeal to the students, to those who are interested about politics or political science, but also to the people from the field. So we're trying to kind of both give introductions or a glimpse into the fields of political science, of what it means to be a faculty member and so on, to give them pointers and hints of how to get into these fields, but also to talk about some interesting issues from politics. So we're going to try to do all of these as far as we can take it, and as far as our conversation will take us. So I think that a good place to start is for you, first of all, tell us a little bit about the place where you are, the place where you work. Tell us a little bit about your university, about Timișoara, Romania. Our guests might not, our public might not know everything about these institutions, these places.
I come from the western part of Romania. Romania, a member state of the European Union, as well as a strong NATO ally. Just to put in the geopolitical context, a country that has been under a totalitarian regime for almost half a century. Timișoara is the place where the revolution against the totalitarian regime of, some of you might remember, Ceausescu, the former totalitarian leader of the communist Romania. So the revolution in 1989, which overthrew the communist government, has started in this particular city. So we are very proud that, in a sense, we are part of the turn of the communist regime into a democracy. The painful process of democratization was entered through these gates. The city on the border of the western Romania, a very important element, has a very wide and mixed community of various nationalities living within the city, with a large majority of Hungarian people. And actually the revolution was started by a Hungarian reformed pastor minister, which was very interesting to see as a minority group under the Ceausescu regime to be able to trigger the whole revolution. So that it is the revolution city, it is the place where freedoms have entered our part of the world. And eventually we are now a consolidated democracy, a strong partner of the European Union as well as NATO, as I said. We have a thriving university. I work for a young university because almost everything in terms of humanities has had to be reset from 1989. In fact, the Department of Political Science has been started a few years after the revolution. This was something that has not existed during the communist regime. It was just, if there were social sciences and political sciences, they were fully controlled by the Marxist ideology. So there is no such thing as a proper political science department or international relations, and for that matter, not even sociology or psychology in its current democratic understanding. If they were there, even philosophy was Marxist philosophy. So everything was entirely controlled by the ideological leadership on the party state, the communist regime. So everything has had to be started from scratch. Somehow, in God's sense of humor, I ended up establishing a Department of Political Science in the late 90s, actually 98, when I returned from my studies in the UK, in England. I studied religious studies and theology from all places and all things in the UK. And then on my return to Timișoara, I was invited to give a few lectures, and then somebody liked me there, I guess, and I was invited to join the faculty. At that stage, it was a faculty of sociology and whatever else, no political science. So I ended up pioneering, again, with no merits, but just I was happened to be there and to be crazy and sufficiently enthusiastic about it to start the new department. So in a sense, we started the Department of Political Sciences. Now it is a wide, large faculty. The university itself has around 40,000 students at the moment, 36 to 40,000. The political science faculty, now it's a fully grown institution in itself. It's called the Faculty of Governance Studies and Communications. It has all levels of education from bachelor to doctoral and postdoctoral studies. I have the honor to run at the moment the doctoral school. It's a wide doctoral school. It's called Doctoral School of Philosophy, Sociology and Political Science. And so, yeah, it's interesting how in a post-totalitarian, post-communist regime, as a theologian and religious studies graduate to start with, and then I specialized. I shifted a little bit. I betrayed a little bit my first training, but how I ended up establishing a Department of Political Sciences and political studies and governance studies at the West University. Thriving university, young, dynamic, open-minded. I think we are at a very good place, and that's something that only new territories of freedom can offer.
And it's one of the largest universities in Romania.
Yeah, it's one of the top 4 universities. We have a consortium of universities that are top level. So yeah, the capital plus 3 more cities. Yeah, we form.
And it's good that you gave us the other detail from your background about your background in religious studies, in theology, because one of the issues that we might talk about is the issue of religion and politics, which remains one of your focuses of concern, and mine as well. You started the Department of Political Science there, and then you worked there, you specialized, and so on. At a certain point, you were asked, or somehow you got to work in diplomacy. So let's go in that direction, because I think, as I said, it's very interesting for our listeners, for our viewers to understand what sort of paths can lead you where. And there's no set path. That's always interesting that each path is individual and particular. So first of all, how did you get into the diplomatic sphere, into international diplomacy?
Well, it was, as I said, pioneering times in Romania, and that included international relations and diplomacy. And I've got the honor of, I had the honor of being invited directly by that time Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Mihai Răzvan Ungureanu, who was very young. I think at that stage, the youngest Minister of Foreign Affairs of Romania, full stop, in the history of Romania. So that was in itself a step of revigoration of the state, the Romanian state. And with him, he wanted to invite a number of public intellectuals, people that he knew of, mainly people that were trained outside of Romania, outside the Romanian educational system. And I qualified for that. And somehow public intellectual life got to be known by him through various activities and works. And some of those works you remember perhaps very well. So he took notice of me, and we also crossroads through our academic work. He was himself an academic at that stage, a young academic like myself. And after he was nominated, I got this funny call in the morning from his chief of office saying, Mr. Minister, he invites you to join the diplomatic corps, and he's willing to have a discussion, but he would like to send you to South Africa, Cape Town, and please think about it and let us know. And I said, well, when do you want my answer? And basically, I think it was said, is it possible by the end of today's working day? So yeah, it was more or less out of the blue, but very honoring, entirely honoring. So eventually, yes, we said yes. We were brave enough to say yes, and that's how I entered that world. So basically, to reply technically, I think it's the recognition of my academic work and also my public life as an intellectual. I've started already publishing. I've got noted by various people, and including this kind of colleagues and friends who reached those positions. And the idea was to bring what you would call some new approaches to diplomacy. And we were a number of people, not just myself. I think we were like at least 6 that I'm aware of that were invited from outside the system to join at the top, which was a huge advantage. So yeah, this is one way of entering. It's a very limited, because usually diplomatic career, it's a diplomatic career like any others, and you start low and grow up the ladder. In my case, and as with a few others, up to a certain percentage, almost every State Department would do the same, would invite qualified people to join at the top. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a bit misleading. Yeah, you can't. It was a blessing. It isn't
Yeah.
something. It's at everybody's hand to reach the very top
Yeah.
from the.
Well, it's kind of the same in the States as well, because you
Yes.
have the career track, and then you have the sort of the people who are invited to, especially in specifically into the ambassador or consul position. It would be people from
Yeah.
outside the system, but for other reasons.
It's interesting. It's interesting. It's not in my case. It wasn't political, because I still have friends who say, "What party did you go with?" I've never been a party member. I obviously have my sympathies, and obviously, but never through the party lines. It was more on
Yeah.
the academic side and the recognition of
Yeah,
my work.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then they chose you for South Africa. Do you know why?
I have a wild guess, and I think I also had some talks with my people in the ministry, because of my intimate knowledge of the British system of the UK. They knew I was fully qualified in the UK. All my studies from 92 to 98 have been in the UK, bachelor, doctoral plus postdoctoral work within very well established universities. I did my final bits on as a visiting scholar at Oxford University as postdoc studies. So I had, and I also had, and still have a strong network of friends and colleagues within the British system, and I think they consider that I understand the British mentality and type of work, and the Commonwealth, and obviously London, Britain were very, very much something for the fully qualified diplomats, not beginners like me. But I think they had the idea that I can have some impact. I can understand the culture. I can explain what's going on there, but I also can represent Romania's interest in a better way. And the other affinity was my interest in human rights and moral philosophy. Uh, don't forget, South Africa it was even fresher then, but it was the place in the world where the Truth and Reconciliation Commission has been extremely efficient. It avoided the bloodshed at the end of the apartheid. And for me, it was of a massive interest, intellectual interest, to go and see what does it mean to have human rights and Truth and Reconciliation Commissions of that sort, of such efficiency, and to see if we can translate that into some Romanian context, if I can pick up anything from there and bring some know-how and some knowledge and experience to our country. And the third element, I think it was my sort of religious background. Coming from a Protestant perspective and background, and that was also something it did give me a extremely wide opening doors through the South African system of the state, and because I was speaking the same language religiously with most of them, and there are many, at least these three layers of I think understanding at the level of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs when they picked me and offered this kind of position.
It makes complete sense in all three accounts. And you were appointed as a consul general, right? So that's not an ambassador. Can you tell our listeners what does that mean? What does a consul do, and how is it different from what an ambassador does?
Yeah, these are distinctions that are finely tuned distinctions. You have to be aware of them, because there is, for instance, a significant distinction between a consul general and a consul. The consul general is a head of mission. You have an ambassador, and you have, within an embassy, you can have how many consuls you need, given the mission, the size of the mission or the country or the interest. But very often, not often, not almost never will you find a ambassador and the consul general within the same mission. They may be in different locations, and they're two different missions, because both the ambassador and the consul general have this prerogative as heading the missions. So as consul general, you are a head of a mission. As consul, you are functioning under the authority of the ambassador, and you are just part of the diplomatic apparatus and architecture. But as head of mission, as consul general, you have responsibilities. You have your own, depending on the national systems and rules. But in the Romanian case, you have full autonomy in a sense. You obviously work in coordination with your embassy, but you report straight back to your home office, to your ministry. So you are responsible, fully responsible, including financially, for all the outgoings and workings of the consular mission in that particular area. What countries do when you hear that they have embassies and then consul generals in various positions, it means that they have more than just the interest of representing the interests of their citizens in those cities. Like South Africa, as you may be aware, or listeners may be aware, maybe not. South Africa is the only country in the world, as far as I'm aware, that they have three different capitals geographically that represent the executive, the legislative, and the judicial power. So the executive seats and the national government sits in Pretoria, and the legislative capital sits, the national parliament sits in Cape Town. That's why Cape Town is a major attraction for diplomats. So at my time, I think we were 47 professional consulates, consul generals, and some consuls, depending on the budget and the interest, but consul generals sitting in Cape Town, and the ambassadors were residing in Pretoria, so that we could have access and understanding of what's going on from the legislative perspective in that country, in that region. The judicial, just to fill in the information, judicial is Bloemfontein, where you have the High Court. And the South African system is beautiful, it's interesting, but only having said that, it means that basically as consul general, I was heading the mission, I was supervising the work of the mission, but also I represented the interests of my government, first of all, regarding the citizens, protecting the Romanian citizens, also providing a link between South Africa and Romania in terms of everything that has to do with consular issues, but I also had prerogatives in promoting economic interests, cultural interests. I had an economic counselor with me there. So it was a wider perspective, educational, religious cooperation, and so on. So it was a wider mission. So it's, in a sense, consulate general as a mission. It's a miniature embassy, not fully plenipotentiary prerogatives as the consul general. That's only the ambassador, but still high levels of representation at the level of the national government and from your national government. You're appointed by the prime minister, whereas the ambassador is appointed by the president, but you have to be received in South Africa, where you are posted as consul general, to have the exequatur, to have the approval from the head of the state. So it's almost like an ambassador.
Fascinating stuff, and you were there for, I think, seven years or so, thereabouts.
About 7 years, yeah.
Yeah, and so that was I'm sure it was a crucial formative experience from so many points of view, professional, intellectual. But I'm going to jump right to the personal one, because you were thrown into an area that you haven't been before, into a society that was very particular, with a very particular history, very particular challenges. And you met a lot of people, as you said, well, your Protestant background gave you an entry point in a common language with the people there, which matters, especially since the rates of, the rates of religiosity are higher in Africa in general, so that matters a lot. So all of that. So I'm going to jump right to, what was your most important personal takeaway from this experience?
Well, it's hard to single out one. I think it was a growing experience, as you were saying earlier. It was a growing experience. It was a fantastic opportunity to, first of all, to experiment what I was reading in the books, and then to see it firsthand through for negotiation commissions, human rights protection, and coming out of a massive conflict, the apartheid regime, which was tough and extremely perfidious in a sense, and hard to dismantle. We thought it's going to be very hard to dismantle. It's not easy, but at least they made crucial steps to avoid any bloodshed. So in terms of understanding and in terms of personal level, obviously creating networks that are lasting even today. I am a full professor at Stellenbosch University at the moment, an honorary professor, but I have working connections there which have lasted. It's already 10, 15 years since we started. Yeah, I think that's the gain. The massive gain is a new home, in a sense, a new place where I can consider home, with so many friends and so many connections. Yeah.
So yeah, so there were all the intellectual sort of professional, but personally, how has this experience changed
That's for us, others to say if they noticed anything. It's hard for how did it change me? And yeah, my wishful thinking would be that I matured somehow. I came out a bit more serious about things and seeing things through a more mature lens, and not taking things for granted, understanding what suffering means, understanding what forgiveness means, seeing the power of truth, seeing the power of religion in a sense, because at the end of the day, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission had a very religious foundation, Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Tutu, and his whole construct on the idea that you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. And to see that applied politically at an international level, at national, but then international level, that was shocking, to see how this can be applied, because we teach international relations and politics and realism and all that and liberal values, but this was the recognizing and repenting for your sin basically, and saying I'm very sorry for what's happened, and here is why I did it. This was the order, chain of orders. And to see the other crying and saying we forgive you, or we doesn't matter if we forgive you, but yes, your guilt is, you're guilt free in a sense. That was, I mean, we're talking politics, real life politics, not books. So I think to me that was a very, I think that consolidated my strong belief in virtue ethics. It is since then that I started developing my work on virtue ethics and my idea that at the end of the day, what matters is your character building and your way of looking at life and looking at yourself and saying, who am I at the end of the day is what matters most. And regardless of who sees me or not, where I'm, and yeah.
Yeah, and that that sort of points to the fact that at the end of the day, I mean, existence is a whole. And although we are discipline specific and we try to specialize and we work within niches and schools and so on, I think it's very, very important. It's something that I find very important always to push this, that everything that we do is part of a grander whole. Even education, we are educating the full human being, and we never should forget that, even if what we're doing is very specialized and particular. Because what you're pointing out is the fact that what you're saying, right? It's this connection between political theory, political philosophy, in the deepest way. Philosophy, theology, they meet. It's the pursuit of truth, right? The connection between that and practical politics. They might be different subfields in the field of political science, but they're part of the same thing, because the practical politics, as you said, those deep principles of virtue, ethics, of philosophy, theology, had very concrete results in practice. So it's not something we can separate. And coming from countries that have suffered under communism, we think of Václav Havel and others. The power of speaking the truth has very, very concrete effects.
Exactly, and the opposite goes the same. Unfortunately, the opposite of it goes dangerously destructive. So.
Exactly. And is this when you started cooperating? Because you had a good relationship with the Jean Bethke-Eilstein, one of the major thinkers in the U.S. Can you talk about how you got to work with her and why this connection works so well?
Yeah, it was. I mean, she's one of my role models. I had the great honor of knowing her personally, and it was only Jean could have been doing that. I wrote to her. I came for a APSA, American Political Science Association gathering in the States at some stage. Forgot when.
2003.
2003. So I was reading her books. I already knew of her. And then when I looked on the list of participants, Jean Bethke-Eilstein, and I said, that's it, I want to see her. And then I was crazy enough to write to her and say, hello, Professor Bethke-Eilstein, this is blah, blah, blah. I'm coming. It would be wonderful if you could. And then she immediately replied, that's a very great pleasure, Silviu. So we met. We had dinner, whatever, was it in Chicago? I forgot. Or
Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, all that. Were we together?
I know your past better than you do.
Okay, you read
I had access to secret files.
Exactly, you read my CV freshly.
Exactly.
But yes, it was Philadelphia. That's right. So we met, and then that triggered the whole thing, and then we became Close, I can say close because she came to Timișoara. We organized a few lectures for her, and then I think she came back the second time, and we gave her a doctor honoris causa here. And yeah, unfortunately, then I left, and then her health decayed quite rapidly. But
Can you
other
can
than
you
that,
tell our listeners a little bit about her, because we know the name, but a little bit about her work, her background. Where I think she was at Notre Dame, right?
she was a Notre Dame. No, she was a Chicago. Notre
Oh,
Dame
Chicago. Yeah, yeah,
Chicago University. She taught at Chicago University. She was a very, very committed believer in human dignity and the pursuit of peace. She was very powerful in justice as well. So she combined these three elements, which is very difficult in a sense because you have justice, peace, and human dignity, and those can be contrasting at times. But I think she's managed to frame the whole discourse on human dignity around the question of justice and love. So she had a strong Protestant background, and eventually she moved to the Catholic Church. But overall, she was a firm believer in human dignity and natural law, and the idea that we are made in love and for love, but in justice and with truthfulness and righteousness in a sense, and justice, not just love, not just justice. So this difficult balance that we are striving to achieve between the two. How can I be loving and just as well, and not only just and without loving, and
yeah,
punishing in the name of justice? So these kind of very complex issues she dealt with in her works, and I
yeah,
wrote an article. It's available. You can find it. Just Google Jim Betkestan Rogobete. I know it's honoring, but I wrote an article with an overall view of her work, and yeah, I think that's where she was, and
yeah. And
yeah,
how good it is, how faithful, right, or fated that you went to South Africa after you have met her,
yes,
and after you were
exactly,
actively thinking about these issues to get to a place where you could
absolutely.
see them in action.
Absolutely, absolutely. And interesting is that I already started conversations with Mihairas Vanungureanu, who at that time when we discussed and conversed about these issues was just lecturing in Bucharest, and eventually he got involved in diplomacy in Vienna with Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCD, and OAC, and he was following the same things, human rights and security and cooperation, democracy in Europe. So I think Mihai was aware. I think he was aware of my work as well. So um, they things were sort of falling
Yeah,
together
yeah,
into a
yeah. And
plan.
again, that takes us to what I just mentioned, that there is not one way, but the idea is that if you pursue, what I usually tell my students is like, you just know what direction you're aiming at. You
Yes,
will
yes.
find the way, but the direction is important to have a North Star, yeah, to kind of follow.
Totally agree. And put the extra effort, put the extra mile. I mean, it doesn't take much. It's just be more interested than the others and
Yeah.
step out, do those extra steps, and you'll get noticed.
Yeah. So then you came back, and since maybe early 2010s, if I'm not mistaken, you've gotten more involved with basically all these circles of scholarship and probably also policy making at the EU level and within the EU, dealing with international security. How did you sort of got involved in this area? Because that's kind of a lot of your work is now in that area, I think.
Yeah, it's in diplomacy for peace, security, and defense. So it still has the major emphasis on diplomacy, with a hint of moral philosophy. But I'll explain how I got there. Through my time of work serving as a diplomat, I've got the opportunity to study a few things. Sorry, through our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we have a diplomatic institute, and they offered courses for the diplomats. So I took a few courses. One of them was Security and Global Affairs. That's what was the name, and that opened up my mind, my theoretical curiosity, and obviously I was dealing with those things firsthand in South Africa. So it was a mix of a deeper understanding at an academic level, plus my direct involvement with global issues, seeing things, and that's a huge advantage as a diplomat because you reach the highest level, the higher levels, the echelons of society, and you have access to a few things that are harder to spot from an ordinary position on the social ladder or academic life. So you get access to things. You have ways of meeting people and talking to people and understanding and analyzing, and so that's a huge gain as a diplomat and as an academic, as in my case. So that's when I realized how complex this world is, how dangerous this world is. It was already 2013, 2014, the first invasion of the Russians in Ukraine.
Crimea,
And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, Crimea and the Donbas and the conflicts there, but Crimea particularly. So I've realized that actually the question of peace and defense is not a question that has to be left only to the military or the specialized apparatus, the hardware of the democracies. It is an individual responsibility. Uh, I said it almost even then in 2014, 2015, that we are all somehow directly or indirectly soldiers on this in this new front that we are facing. Today is very obvious. At that stage, it was more for the literature and people that are sort of reading and talking about this at a professional level and seeing things in terms of manipulation and so on through the social media. But it was the realization of the fact that it's not a responsibility only for the specialist. We all have to be prepared. We all have to be ready to defend our democracies, to defend our way of life, because we were under attack then, but we definitely, or were at least at the beginning of being attacked. Whereas now we are in total war. I mean, it's a declared war. It's an obvious war at the moment. Our minds are the target. It's a cognitive war. Some specialists will tell you that about 70% of the attacks against the Western world and the liberal world order, United Nations type of approach to the world, regulated and so on. It's under attack through this cognitive at this cognitive level, minds, activities, actions. Without tanks, it's only 25% that it is kinetic with tanks and things on the borders only within Ukraine and so on.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah, and that's something not everybody perceives because we are
I know.
because we're in it basically. That's
Exactly,
just what's going on. And this
exactly.
because we are talking about hybrid warfare back in the mid 2000s, early
Yeah.
to tens, and this is now it in practice.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what brought me to my attention, the idea of and the interest towards security studies, peace, security, defense, and through my work at the university, we had opportunities of joining the European Security and Defense College in Brussels, which is basically a network of institutions providing education and training in these kind of fields. And again, through, I guess, a line of various positive contexts and hard work, I have to admit, I ended up drafting at least two different training programs for the European Security and Defense College, which are, one is called Diplomatic Skills for Peace, Security and Defense, and that's a basic level. And then it's an advanced course, which is called Advanced Diplomacy for Peace, Security and Defense, and that's more advanced. It targets specialists from the member states of the European Union. So yeah, that's the involvement I have at the moment. The courses are permanent courses of the European Security and Defense College.
The college, is this a college established by the EU?
The college is a network of institutions. It is an
Okay.
institution in itself, but there is a building, there is a structure there, but basically they rely on EU member states institutions who voluntarily want to provide training towards these kind of fields. It's very complex. It has over 250 institutions at the moment all over Europe, and it is a difficult process and strong process of vetoing and acceptance of the institution within the network. But once you are in the network, then you contribute to the development of various courses. They have over 200 courses at the moment running. So it is a complex operation. Smart. It is an example of what you can do creatively within the European Union.
And is
Without
this
much
open?
resource, without much resource.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this open only for people from the EU or Europe or from around the
It
world?
has various levels. It has various levels of engagement. Most of them are run through 4 EU member states participants. And the registration to these courses is done through a centralized way. Each nation has so-called a point of contact, which is usually Ministries of Foreign Affairs. So people register through those points of contact for the participation in those courses. So it's not an open call. It's not something that you can register and go and participate to the course. You are nominated by your institution. So you're hopefully with that comes the support, financial support, because the college doesn't support you. So basically, you find your support through your institutions that are sending you. So that's one layer, and that's the most common. Then we have various projects, courses that we run and open towards Eastern Partnership countries, for instance, Moldova, Ukraine, Georgia, Azerbaijan, so on. Or we have Western Balkans projects with the countries from that region, where we open the participation. But again, the participants come through their ministries. It's not a typical open call in which there's a conference and whoever wants to participate can register. So you
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
have a certain point of contact.
yeah. This is an interesting point because in terms of your work in this network and the topics that you mentioned, because for example in IR we talk about issue networks, which basically in a more broad sense means that every sort of society or in certain societies there develops a sort of a consensus about issues, which means that certain, let's say, international issues are seen only through one perspective, and the narrative becomes very one-sided or monochromatic. Let me put it this way, and that's true. That's true for the United States. It's true for United Kingdom, and it's also true for Europe in a sense. In various areas, there is a way of looking at things which is different. So what I would think would be very interesting is to ask you, what are the main topics today at the top of the discussions in international security in Europe? What are the most important sort of concerns and how are they framed? Because what you just said, for example, this idea that we are in a universalized hybrid warfare in which everyone is a soldier, well, that's not an alien idea, but it's not at the forefront of our concerns here, although we are directly affected in the United States just as much, and even more so, because this is a principal target. So I would be curious about what other sort of topics are at the forefront of your discussions and what sort of approaches.
Well, it is the classic question of how can we build more resilient democracies within Europe and obviously the Western Partnership with transatlantic partnership and all the families of the democratic world, including those in the Indo-Pacific. So how can we contribute as Europeans, if you're asking me about Europe per se, how can we contribute as Europeans to a stronger alliance? It's not just more resilience, but now what the new term that is very much at the center of our attention in Europe is strength. How do we build our own strength? How do we build our own positioning as a powerful key player on the international arena? It's not enough to have good partnerships and strong partners. How do we become ourselves strong so that the network and the partnership becomes stronger? And yes, here is where we have to admit that the US is pushing us in the right direction, I think. Not necessarily always with the most diplomatic and polite way, but I have to admit that yes, we do have to wake up. It was a wake-up call when the invasion took place, and since then we are accelerating a lot. And yeah, we are growing our capabilities. We are discussing financially how we can grow the concept is strategic autonomy. Are we working towards a strategic autonomy as European Union? Yes, but only to strengthen the alliance, not against the alliance or not against the North Atlantic Alliance. So I think this is the main thrust there, the main goal to have a powerful, integrated European Union, strong European Union that will be a key partner in the transatlantic Western hemisphere.
Yeah, because the so-called vacation from history is over, right?
Yeah, we call it long time city break, global.
Yes, city break. So, from Europe, let's focus now on Romania, because, as you said, Romania is truly at a key, crucial crossroads and it has always been that area of the world. Central Europe, Central Eastern Europe has always been at the crossroads of history. We always talk about that, right? Those who know that area, that study that area. And especially Romania today, because it borders Ukraine, it borders Moldova, formerly part of the USSR. Romania never was part of the USSR. That's at the north. At the west, it borders countries from the European Union, established countries from the Schengen area. At the south, it borders the Balkans and other, often powder keg of history. And then it borders also the Black Sea. And across the Black Sea, you have Turkey, a key player, and immediately the Middle East. And Central Asia. Truly, Romania is at the key, very strategic point. So the security challenges and political challenges, I guess, are equal. And I just want to lead specifically to one point, because you talked about here hybrid warfare. And a couple of years ago, there was an election in Romania, a presidential election that was whose results were cancelled because of this hybrid warfare. Can you give our listeners a background into that event?
Well, the background of that event is that we were somehow, I don't know if naive as a state, to think that the power of the manipulation is not as strong as it was proven to be, in fact. So that was, in a sense, our government, not government, but the establishment that was supposed to protect us from such interferences from adversary states and adversary actors, not necessarily states, but actors, was not. We couldn't believe that it was so powerful, and eventually it was proven to be extremely powerful. And there are there is clear proof that it was massive interference. And from my own perspective, my own judgment, I think it was the right decision to stop the war in a sense. It's almost like an undeclared attack, to bring the attack at least to a halt and say, that's it, stop it. And now we'll defend better. Luckily, we could do it. It wasn't too late. So we stopped it at the right time, and we did a reset, and with more care for this kind of defense systems. Because
So can you give them more detailed information? Like actually, what happened? So there was what did they discover? What was the process?
Well, I don't have the details at hand, so I don't want to misrepresent the whole thing. But overall, it was obviously a competition for the with presidential candidates. And one candidate came from almost nowhere. Obviously, those of us who watched carefully politics, we knew of him, we knew of his potential within a certain area, strata of the society. But none of us, literally none of us, expected to have that kind of following. So what happened was, within the last 2 weeks of the election, of the running for time, running up time, there was a massive influx of manipulation through the social media systems. There were the candidate said that his candidacy costed him €0. He didn't require any money from the government. It was totally zero, no €1 for the candidacy, which was naive on his side, obviously. And then it was proven that there were lots of money behind the scenes, lots of money involved in the campaign. Some things that is proof, obviously that's process in trial now. So I can't accuse anyone. Nobody can accuse anyone until justice is being, the process is being run through the trial. But the allegations are that, yes, there are money, there were strange money, not necessarily clean money. And there was a lot of foreign interference on cyber attacks. So those are all documented by the accusers in the process, by the prosecutors. So we'll see what happens. But basically, it was strong enough, the case, that the Constitutional Court said, yes, these were not fair and uninterfered elections. So they nullified the set, and it was a reset within a couple of months. So
there were new elections. There were new elections, which he again participated, right?
So he didn't. No, he didn't participate. Okay. No, he was not. He's on trial now.
Okay,
He's
okay.
on trial for, I don't know. I have, as I said, I don't know the case
Yeah,
in detail,
yeah,
so I don't want to
yeah.
take any risk of talking things that I don't know. But basically, I think he's, I don't know. Yeah, he did not declare the finances and something like that, and so,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
that needs to be checked. Yeah.
Because this takes me again to what you mentioned, the fact that I do think that we're still very naive. I do think that we're still very naive and don't understand that, because there's this idea, well, the people had spoken or whatever. Well, things do not happen anymore that way, and because of the impact of,
Absolutely, absolutely. In security studies, I've been exposed theoretically to scenarios maybe 10 years ago almost, in various contexts in which we were told these days, and we're talking 10 years ago, things amplified by hundreds of times, in terms of speed. We were told that with a budget of $500,000, you can have a whole city upheaval within a week, and you can have the mayor removed, regardless of the mayor is, regardless of what the city is. It's $500,000 and then 7 days, and then you can upturn at least bring the city out on its feet in the street. So that was the level of manipulation, potential manipulation those days. Imagine today with the new technology at hand and the powerful actors playing this game. Yeah, it's obvious that you cannot be naive. I keep saying, and I'm glad that eventually our president, not long ago, and some other major leaders in the West are clearly saying, in the Western Europe, are clearly saying this is war. It is hybrid. It's a mix of everything. But it is war, and then you have to apply extreme measures in a sense. The French said immediately after our situation with the constitutional court, and the Germans, both countries said, if these extremist parties will win, we will do the same, like Romanians. So I know the American administration was very upset with this decision in
Well,
Romania.
again, yeah,
But
but again, it's very because I'm, my scholarship and also my background straddles the continents. Let me put it this way: I'm able to sort of be attuned to both discourses, and there's a lot of misunderstanding on both sides. And this is why, I study comparative politics. First of all, understand the society at hand and what the discourse is within, the reality, how it happens within, and then talk about it from the outside, because you are speaking from a completely different historical, cultural,
Exactly.
value-based structure. So whatever you're thinking, it's not going to fit. It's a different reality.
Yeah.
So very
Totally
careful,
agree.
Let's be very
Totally
measured
agree.
and careful. Yeah.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah. And what you're saying is also very important, because a year later, the same thing was preempted in Moldova. And that's where it shows that this is a very real thing, because before their election, they were threatened by the same thing, but they acted early enough, probably because they learned from their neighbor.
Not probably, for sure. I tell you for sure, because there was a lot of know-how and infrastructure, strong support from Romania and the European Union mission in Moldova. There is European mission for security and defense in Moldova, common security and defense policy mission, opened in 2021, very recent and extremely successful in providing know-how, providing ways of teaching and training the Moldovan government to defend themselves properly and to have the institutional architecture that would make them resilient. And it is clear now that the tactics are the same. The ways in which they were trying to penetrate the society in Moldova were similar, so the traces were found. So yeah.
That nice wooden horse, the gift horse. It turns out there were soldiers inside.
Exactly the same thing.
So it's not a gift. No,
History.
I think we can even frame it differently in terms that, let's say, an American audience could sort of understand easily. We're talking about wars of independence. These are wars of independence because Moldova, by defeating the attempt of this sort of a hybrid takeover of its government through apparently legal means, but actually through manipulation, dirty money and so on, and through gangs and so on, well, they were defending their independence. These are wars of independence. And I think this is, and it's true for Germany and France and Romania equally, because it's about, are you able to actually control your destiny or not? That's the challenge.
Existential existence. the survival, yes, definitely. It's not as direct as Ukraine. The Ukraine is definitely under direct attack, physical and so on. But yeah, all this region, it's a question of spheres of influence, and I think all of us here in the region have experienced sorry,
What it means to not be independent.
what it means not being independent. Yeah, experience spheres of influence, and we wanted to have our own choice and our own voice in sorry, I just need to close this. Okay. In our destiny, in our alliances, and that's
Yeah,
part of the post-World War II dimensions of
yeah.
the liberal order, in which sovereign states should be free to choose their partners and their common security policies.
And that's the difference. There's a meme circulating around the difference between how a country joins NATO and how a country joins the Soviet Union. And the country joins the NATO is two heads of state shaking hands, and the country joins the Soviet Union, there's tanks coming down the street. And from the experience of Central and Eastern Europe, that's very true. Speaking of so Romania, as I said, is at this crossroads of threats and challenges. What are other major important challenges facing the country right now, from any perspective you would think of?
Today, well, extremely complex
Many.
issues, many issues, like all Europe. Political stability is here because we've had elections, but it's quite um, difficult to maintain. It is being maintained at the moment. We are not having any immediate major political crisis, but it's very difficult because you have parties with somehow often not converging priorities. Um, there are still significant traces of old corruption. It's far better than before. The economy went way up the ladder compared to what it used to be. We are doing very well, performing quite well, but still you still have these old networks of corruption that are still present. The current government, the prime minister is working hard, the president as well, working hard to limit that. Um, I would say, sure, we are on the border of the free world in a sense, as you're saying at the beginning, and that gives huge responsibilities, and it's difficult to maintain a powerful feeling of strength and hope, particularly with this such of ongoing war of attrition in Ukraine, and you see the machinery never ending, the attackers and the defense. And so in a sense, we need resilience. We need to have a society that understands that it's a long run. We are on the long run to secure peace, and we need to be disciplined and to work hard towards strengthening our posture here on the side of the free world, on the margin. Um, and crucial elements like Moldovan integration, Ukrainian integration in the European Union are absolutely priorities to us. Um, and we need to resist the manipulations coming from bad-willing actors from abroad, trying to break through our sort of misunderstandings. And so, yeah, overall, I think we are at a good point in history, but at the same time, we need to stay stable, to grow, to strengthen ourselves, our resilience, and our
Yeah,
partnerships with the right
yeah.
people.
So the key word again is strength, but building your own strength, so you can also be a stronger element of the network.
Which is working towards, if you noticed, if you followed just two days ago or so, the NATO conference and gathering on military development, economic military development, was organized in Bucharest, which is significant, very significant. The strengthening of NATO through procurement, through development, in terms of the military and so on, which means basically that yes, Romania is stepping up its military production, its involvement in providing a more secure partner here on the eastern border.
And how about for Dr. Rogobete, for Silviu Rogobete, what are your next challenging your priorities? What are you thinking about? What are things you would like to have more time to think and write about? Where are you in that personal sort of trajectory of learning, knowing, and writing?
Well, my first answer is my grandson. It's my first at the moment, so I'm moving towards that direction. But yeah, educating my grandson and having deep conversations with the 1 year and 3 months old guy, which already started. So we're having good conversations. But yes, more serious one. Yeah, my work at the moment is more and more in a deeper understanding of the need for character and values. I'm still the same on the same boat, but now it's even more. In my courses in Brussels, for instance, this was the fourth or the fifth edition. I usually do my own teaching class because the project is wider, but I have also my own teaching and lecture. And it used to be called Diplomacy and Global Affairs. This year is the first year, and I said Diplomacy, Virtues, and Global Affairs. So
Awesome,
I
yeah.
I realized that we cannot avoid this question from either side of the track, and it's more complicated than ever. And because it is more complicated, there is an even deeper felt need to seriously address questions of ethics and behavior and ethical behavior and ethical being, actually, because that's what I try to distinguish between doing things and being something, questioning not your deontology, because that's written in the books if you're a military or if you are a diplomat, or you have the deontological codes and your military codes or diplomatic codes. But what does it mean to be someone who does these things? What does it take to be able to respect the deontological codes and even to go further than what is just required mechanically out of you? So this is more my concern, deeper and deeper. And yeah, in various contexts in which I ended up giving lectures, that's my main emphasis. And perhaps what I'm trying to do is to put all my colleagues together who are teaching in this course. These are international. It's an international group of professionals, high-level professionals and academics from all over Europe, to write a book. They all agreed, but now it's my task to you know what editing a book with famous people means. So that's
Yeah.
if a concrete project. That's exactly my project, to sort
Yeah.
of put some of
Yeah.
these lectures into writing. And
So here's my question, although you might have even answered it already because you're talking about a coming book. Have you found a receptive audience to this kind of discourse? Because I would argue that, especially in Europe, the way the sciences and political science has they developed since the Enlightenment, there has been a very strong push away from such debates, for such discussion, from talking about anything related to values or to the philosophical, theological underpinnings, which you can't escape. But hey, which I found that it's not quite true in the United States here because of the multiplicity of schools and approaches you can have. You can find your niche. So have you found a receptive audience to this kind of a discourse?
well, it's interesting. The discussion is very interesting because before the war against Ukraine, it was much harder. The war against Ukraine woke us up and gave us another lens to look at international relations and conflict and peace and so on. When you heard Zelensky, that famous little video where right second day after the invasion, he and all the command troops were behind him, the chiefs of command, in the middle of the empty square, saying, the president is here, the chief of it is here, the chief of this is here, very emphatically saying, I am located, I am here, we are here. And then connect that with his reply to the Americans when he said, I don't need a taxi ride, I need ammunition. And then at the same time, he said, light will overcome darkness, life will overcome death. To me, those were the waking up moments again, saying, you see the power of ethics, not ethics, but fully assumed virtues, where you're ready to die for your freedoms and everything. That really woke me up. And as you know, I've been through this revolution here, and at a far lower scale, I experienced that kind of freedom within the regime, because when we demonstrated against Ceausescu's regime in the 18th of December 19th, I felt that liberation when I said, whatever happens, I don't care. Even they shoot me, that's it. I'm free. I'm out. So I started revolting against Ceausescu. When that kind of the feeling seizes you, that kind of virtues seize you, then you're transformed. That's in a sense that encouraged me to say, okay, this guy didn't do any consequentialist calculations to say what did happen. These are the bigger power or smaller. We in a way not even utilitarian ethics, deontological, yes, serve my country and my interests. But then the most powerful idea was the virtues. Okay, I'm ready to die for this. I'm here. They're still there doing the same thing. Actually, it's not finished yet. So that's what, in a sense, gives me now a totally different platform to talk about these issues. First of all, for myself to believe even more on this, in this kind of approach, and then courage to talk about it, courage to say, guys, we need to talk about these issues. We cannot avoid them, regardless
Again,
of
because again,
what you
yeah,
want to
yeah, yeah,
separate. Say, philosophy, theology, do your business
yeah,
back home. We'll
yeah.
do our utilitarian. But I get invitations. I get invitations by Oxford University, by European Security, European Space Agency, these kind of things only in the last 6 months, 8 months to give lectures on these kind of topics, which in a sense, to me, it's a sign that, yeah, people, to answer your question, people are interested. It's not blocked.
That's a great point that people woke up. I mean, it's a great point. It's something you've experienced, that people were woken up by these events and by Zelensky's moral standing, like literally and figuratively standing in his place and resisting. And just compare that to what happened a few years before, Afghanistan. I mean, those examples could not be more different, and the Russians, I'm sure, Putin's regime, counted on this being Afghanistan, but they encountered something else.
Yeah, totally agree.
And
From my
this is, yeah.
theoretical perspective, I'm very much a Charles Taylor follower. For those who are specialized in moral philosophy, the idea that you need a moral horizon, you need a solid standing. The first thing is to know where you are standing. To me, that is very symbolistic. What that video, standing in the middle in front of the palace of the government and defending, and having a moral horizon that is outside of yourself, not your interests, but the interests of the common good. So yeah, to me, that's a vivid wake-up call, not only to oppose attacks of this kind, but also to stand for your values.
It has to do with what we talked about, this vacation from history, the fact that Western Europe, was somewhat comfortable for about 50, 60 years under the sort of the NATO and basically American umbrella of security, and basically closing down Eastern and Central Europe because, well, you're there, we don't care, we just, and they were happy to be prosperous. And when you're prosperous and secure because other people have provided it for you like a child, then obviously the world looks very much rosy. But when you go out into the world as an adult and you realize the reality of evil, then there's no other choice but to either embrace it or to think of things in moral terms, because when you're faced with evil, you're forced to make that choice.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
A very busy scholar, a very busy public intellectual, a very busy academic. And yet, we all need some time for ourselves. Now you have the grandson to talk with and to educate, which is wonderful. But you also have was it basically discovered in South Africa, a passion for rugby?
Absolutely.
Tell me what's about rugby. What's about rugby that really caught you?
Okay, rugby, it is the sport that led me to have my first head crack when I was maybe 12. So massive head crack playing rugby back in my hometown in Rešica. So I started as a kid loving it. You may remember those days, Romania was very high level. We were beating France. For those who are following us, check it. If they don't know rugby, but to beat France on those days and so on. So we're really up level. And then we went to a period down. I lost touch with rugby in a sense, but then obviously ending up in South Africa, which is the temple of rugby. And they are the world champions repeatedly right now, currently as well. And having my residence 5 minutes, 10 minutes away from the temple, obviously that got heavily revived. So I'm a big rugby fan. It is amazing. It is an amazing sport with a lot of deep philosophy behind it. It's the ballet of the giants. It's courage, but also it's determination. It means a lot about not who doesn't count who is in front of you as an opponent, but who is behind you to support you. So you fight for every inch with your blood. You conquer inch by inch. It's amazing, and in a very
And
elegant, very
is
powerful game.
it did it attract you also because it's such a deeply team-centered sport?
Hugely team-centered, hugely. You can't make it on your own. I mean, it's a battlefield, and it's very much like strategic game and smart, very smart, and obviously
Because you can only move together because you can have to only pass backward, right? So
backward, and then also, yeah, you can't work on your own, and also you are not protected as well at all. You have your American football, but there is no protection gear on you. You are just like gladiators out there, and then you respect the referee, you respect your opponents. It is an amazing game. It is an amazing.
would you say that the saying applies that the rugby is a brute sport played by gentlemen, while soccer is a gentleman sport played by brutes?
It is a saying. It is absolutely. It is a good saying. I think it is a good saying. Unfortunately, yes, yes.
Because there are some sports which are very interesting that they attract a specific, create a specific culture. Water polo is similar. Water polos, those people most of them have higher education. They're well, it's a very interesting thing. It's a very physical sport, but played by people with intellectuals, basically.
Exactly. But with rugby, it is a hugely family-based game.
Okay.
The players are very familistic, and it is a pride of having the kids with you at the game. And no, it is an educational game, and I'm so glad that Romania has picked up again. Romania is back into.
I heard, yeah.
We've never lost a qualification to the World Cup, which is great. Only once, not long ago, by a technical mistake, but otherwise we are there at the big table with the big ones. And yeah, I think I had a minor contribution during my tenure in South Africa. I've managed to send a few players to Timișoara, and I actually, just to be proud of my own university at that stage, the university was somehow behind the team. And we managed to revive rugby in Timișoara, and we ended up winning almost every year all the championships, national championships. And so yeah, rugby is close to my heart. Yeah.
So that's a sport you follow. What currently do you have? I don't know if you have time, probably not. But what is? I always like to tell my students that, believe it or not, academics or scholars or members of the faculty are also human beings. They have free time. They have a personal life. They might even watch a movie, watch a TV show, read a book that they like. Do you have anything currently that you you're watching, reading, listening to some music that you could share with us? Literally just personal preferences.
Well, at the moment, yeah, I'm very much into choir music. It's maybe aging, I don't know, but I'm returning to, after all the wilderness and the wild stuff of whatever the trends were. I find more and more choral music, a cappella, church type of medieval types of songs and things far more attractive. So I travel quite a lot, and if you see me with my earrings in my flights, most of the time it would be some canticles or some chants and some.
And it's basically musical literature from throughout the ages, not just,
Absolutely.
let's say, British composers.
No, definitely not. It's throughout the ages, and it was a point where I liked the Russian choirs, but not in the last 10 years anymore.
And that's an interesting thing. I'm the same. Like, one of my favorite writers is Chekhov, but I can't read him now. And we know it's it's a deja vu, because we've had this thing before where, politics overtakes culture. Yeah. Well, a few parting words. Thank you so much, first of all, for spending this time with us and sharing from your wealth of experience and from everything that you've been doing. It's also personally great to see you again. We've collaborated. We've worked together in international development in the Balkans years ago. Let's not say how many. And
extraordinary times. Very vivid. I have very vivid memories of
wonderful times.
Work,
yeah.
Very hard work, but also the fun we had in those areas.
Yeah. And also the fact that we have created some very concrete projects of putting together religious groups in building regional security. I'm very proud still of what we've done back then.
Yes, I could say that part of that work was at the origin of my trajectory, where I've got noticed by these people in the government and so on, who later found themselves in positions of influence. So definitely.
So if you have a few parting words for, let's say, our students here, anything that you want to share with them from any perspective, just a few words.
Well, yeah, it is a world somehow governed by mediocrity. So if you want to excel, get out of mediocre states of being. It's the lukewarm area where you feel safe. You either be on fire or freeze, but don't stay there in the lukewarm. Try to avoid trivia and be ready to pay the extra mile, to go the extra mile. And I think you'll get noticed by those people who count and who want to see change and who are always looking. There will always be people looking for the right people to connect with, and they'll find you. You'll find them because you'll have common interests, but they'll find you. And if that happens, then you're out of the banality of life and into the extraordinary, and that's possible. That's possible. I started.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So one more time, Dr. Rogobete, thank you so much for taking the time of your day and for joining us.
Thank you very much, Eugen. It was a great pleasure and honor to converse with you.
And thank you for the listeners and the viewers who stuck with us until the end, which wasn't hard because time just flew by with such a great guest. This was yet another episode of POLITalks TAMUSA. My name is Eugen Nagy. I'm a faculty here at Texas A&M University in San Antonio. I'll see you in the next episode.